Hello, everyone. Today, we're diving into a true story that'll make you gasp, names and details change to protect their privacy. Imagine this. You're sitting at a family dinner, laughter filling the air, when your mother-in-law's icy stare locks onto you. "You don't belong here," she says, banning you from every meal. How would you feel, betrayed, furious? That's exactly where I found myself, caught in a web of unfairness spun by the woman who should have welcomed me. This isn't just about food, it's about control, secrets, and a family torn apart. Stick with me to uncover the truth. I'll never forget the first time it happened. We were at my mother-in-law's house, a sprawling place with a dining room that could seat 20. The table was set with her best china, the kind she only brought out to impress. My husband, Tom, was carving the roast, and our two kids, Ellie and Max, were giggling over some silly joke. I was passing the mashed potatoes, feeling like I finally belonged after years of trying to fit into this tight-knit family. Then, out of nowhere, Margaret, my mother-in-law, cleared her throat. The room went silent. "I need to speak with you," she said, her voice sharp as a knife. She motioned me to the kitchen, away from everyone else in the kitchen. Her demeanor shifted. Gone was the warm hostess. Her eyes were cold, her lips a thin line. "I've decided you're not to join us for family meals anymore," she said. I blinked. Sure, I'd misheard. "Excuse me," I stammered. She crossed her arms. "You heard me. It's better this way. No explanation, no discussion, just a decree." I felt my face burn, a mix of shock and humiliation. Why I pressed, my voice shaking. She just turned away, dismissing me like I was nothing. I stood there, the smell of rose lingering, my stomach twisting. What had I done to deserve this? Back at the table, I tried to act normal, but Tom noticed something was off. "You okay?" he whispered. I forced a smile, not wanting to ruin the evening, but inside, I was reeling. Margaret's words echoed in my head. This wasn't just about one dinner. It was a deliberate attempt to push me out. I thought back to the past few months. There'd been small signs, her snide comments about my cooking, the way she'd exclude me from family photos. But this was a whole new level of hostility. What was driving her? Was it jealousy, control, or something deeper? As the evening dragged on, I watched Margaret laugh with Tom's sister, Claire, like nothing had happened. It stung. I'd spent years trying to win her over, bringing homemade pies, helping with holiday prep, even biting my tongue when she criticized my parenting. Nothing was ever enough. Now, she'd drawn a line, and I was on the wrong side of it. The kids were oblivious, but I could feel the tension building, like a storm about to break. How could I face the next family gathering? Would I just sit in the living room while everyone else ate? The thought was unbearable. Driving home, I stared out the window, replaying her words. Tom reached for my hand. "What's going on?" he asked. I hesitated. Should I tell him? Would he believe me? Margaret was his mother, after all. But keeping this secret felt like letting her win. "Your mom banned me from family meals," I said, quietly. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. "She what?" I could see the disbelief in his eyes, but also something else. Anger. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I wasn't alone in this. But what would happen next? Could we confront her? Or would this tear our family apart? One thing was clear. This was only the beginning. The words still stung, sharp as the moment Margaret uttered them. I'd barely slept, replaying that kitchen scene, her cold eyes, her finality. By morning, I knew I couldn't just swallow this. I had to tell Tom everything. No holding back. Over coffee. I laid it out: his mother's ban, her refusal to explain, the way she'd dismissed me. His face darkened with every word. "This is insane," he said, slamming his mug down. "She can't just dictate who's at our family table." But I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Could his own mother really be this cruel? I wondered the same. What was driving her to single me out? You ever wonder how far someone's resentment can push them? I was about to find out. Tom insisted we confront her. But I wasn't so sure. Margaret wasn't the type to back down. She ruled her family like a queen. Her word law. Still, we drove to her house that afternoon. My stomach in knots. The kids were with my sister. Thank God I didn't want them caught in this storm. When we arrived, Margaret was pruning her roses, calm as ever. "To what do I owe this visit?" she asked, barely glancing up. Tom didn't waste time. "Mum, what's this about banning Sarah from family meals?" Her shears paused, then snipped a stem with precision. I said what needed saying. She replied, cool as ice. I couldn't stay silent. "You owe me an explanation, Margaret. Why am I suddenly not welcome?" She finally looked at me, her gaze piercing. "This family has traditions. Sarah, you don't fit them. Traditions. I'd been part of this family for 8 years: birthdays, Thanksgivings, Sunday roast. What was she talking about?" Tom stepped forward. "That's not an answer. Mom, she's my wife." Margaret's lips twitched, almost a smirk. "Then maybe you should have chosen better." The words hit like a slap. Tom's face flushed. But before he could respond, she turned back to her roses, dismissing us again. I felt rage bubble up. How dare she? Back in the car. Tom was fuming. "I can't believe her," he said. "We're not letting this slide." But I was shaken. Margaret's words weren't just cruel. They were calculated. She wanted me gone. Not just from meals, but from the family's core. I started piecing things together. The snide remarks. The way she'd praise Claire's cooking while ignoring mine. The subtle digs about my outsider roots. This ban wasn't sudden, it was the culmination of years of resentment. But why was it my background, my independence, or something I'd never see coming? Have you ever felt someone's hatred grow right under your nose? That night, Tom called his sister, Claire, hoping she'd shed light. I listened, heart pounding. As he recounted the ban, Claire sounded shocked, but hesitant. "Mom's been tense lately?" she said. "Maybe it's not personal." "Not personal," I wanted to scream. But Claire's tone hinted at something deeper, like she knew more than she was letting on. Tom pressed, but she dodged, promising to talk to Margaret. I didn't trust her to take my side. She'd always been Margaret's favorite. Still, her reaction gave me pause. Was there a secret behind this ban? Something even Tom didn't know. By bedtime, I was exhausted, but restless. The ban was now public, at least to Tom and Claire, and that changed everything. Margaret had drawn a line, and I was on the outside, looking in. But I wasn't going to beg for a seat at her table. If she wanted a fight, I'd give her one. What would you do if someone tried to erase you from your own family? I knew one thing. I had to dig deeper. Find out what Margaret was hiding. This wasn't just about meals anymore, it was about power. And I wasn't backing down. Margaret's ban hung over me like a dark cloud. But I couldn't let it consume me. I needed answers. Why was she so determined to push me out? Lying awake that night, I started piecing together the moments that led to this. There had to be clues in our history, something I'd missed. Have you ever looked back and realized someone's resentment was brewing right in front of you? That's where I was, digging through years of interactions, searching for the root of her hatred. It wasn't just about dinners. It was personal. And I was determined to uncover what fueled her venom. I thought back to when Tom and I first got engaged. Margaret had been polite but distant, her smiles never reaching her eyes. At our engagement party, she'd pulled me aside, her voice syrupy. "You're joining a family with deep roots," she said. "I hope you can keep up." I'd brushed it off as motherly concern, but now it felt like a warning. Over the years, there were other moments. Her insistence on hosting every holiday, her subtle jabs about my city upbringing, the way she'd rewrite family stories to exclude me. Was she threatened by me? An outsider who didn't bow to her control? Then there was the incident 2 years ago. One I'd tried to forget. It was Thanksgiving, and I'd offered to make dessert my grandmother's pecan pie recipe. I spent hours perfecting it, hoping to impress. When I set it on the table, Margaret barely glanced at it. "Claire's pumpkin pie is the family favorite," she said loudly, serving everyone but me a slice. The room went quiet, and I felt my face burn. Tom squeezed my hand under the table, but no one spoke up. Later, I found my pie untouched in the kitchen, shoved behind a stack of dishes. It wasn't just a rejection of my food, it was a rejection of me. Another memory surfaced last summer's family barbecue. I'd been chatting with Tom's cousin, Lisa, when Margaret interrupted. "Sarah, shouldn't you be helping in the kitchen?" she said, her tone sharp. I was mid-sentence, holding a drink, not slacking off. Lisa raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. I laughed it off and went to help. But the sting lingered. Margaret never called out Claire or anyone else like that. It was always me. Always a reminder that I didn't belong. Why was it because I hadn't grown up in their small town? Or because I had a career while Claire stayed home? The more I thought, the clearer it became. Margaret saw me as a threat to her matriarchal reign. I wasn't just Tom's wife. I was someone who challenged her authority, even unintentionally. I worked full-time, spoke my mind, and didn't defer to her every whim. Maybe that's what she meant by traditions, a code for obedience I'd never follow. But there was something else, a nagging feeling that this went beyond petty power plays. What was she hiding? Could there be a secret in her past? Something tied to the family's so-called roots. I decided to talk to Lisa, the cousin from the barbecue. She'd always been kind, a bit of an outsider herself after moving away for college. Over coffee, I spilled everything: the ban, Margaret's cruelty, my suspicions. Lisa listened, her face grim. "Aunt Margaret's always been intense," she said carefully. "But this is extreme, even for her." She hesitated, then leaned in. "There's something about her you might not know. It's not my place. but ask Tom about his dad's side of the family. Her words sent a chill through me. Tom's dad had passed before we met, and Margaret rarely spoke of him. What did he have to do with this? I left the cafe with more questions than answers. But one thing was certain. Margaret's resentment ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. Lisa's cryptic hint about Tom's dad lit a fire in me, but it also left me uneasy. What did Margaret's late husband have to do with her banning me? I wanted to ask Tom. But the family was already fracturing, and I wasn't sure how much more he could take. The ban had become a fault line, splitting us into camps. Have you ever seen a family turn on itself over one person's cruelty? That's where we were. And I was at the center, trying to hold my ground while Margaret's influence pulled everyone apart. Tom was still furious about his mother's words. But Claire's reaction worried me more. After Tom's call, she'd gone quiet, not texting or stopping by like usual. I suspected she was siding with Margaret, maybe out of loyalty or fear. Then, 2 days after our confrontation, Claire showed up at our house unannounced. Her face was tight, her arms crossed. "We need to talk," she said, brushing past me. Tom was at work, and the kids were at school. So it was just us. I braced myself. Mom told me her side. Claire started. Her tone clipped. She says, "You've been disrespectful," undermining her in front of the family. I was floored. Disrespectful, undermining Claire. She banned me from family meals with no explanation. I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "How is that my fault?" Claire's eyes narrowed. She says, "You've been pushing your own ways, ignoring how things are done." I wanted to scream. My ways were things like working full-time or daring to have an opinion. But Claire wasn't done. "Mom's the glue of this family," she said. "If she's upset, there's a reason." I saw it then. Claire wasn't just defending Margaret. She was protecting her place as the favored daughter. What would you do when someone twists the truth to keep you down? I tried to reason with her. "Claire, think about it. She's targeting me for no reason. Doesn't that bother you?" But Claire just shook her head. "You need to apologize," she said, like it was that simple. "Apologize for what existing." I refused. And she left, promising to fix this with Margaret. Her visit left me rattled. If Claire was against me, who else was I called Lisa? Hoping for an ally? She picked up, her voice warm but cautious. "Claire's always been Mom's shadow," she said. "But not everyone's on their side. Uncle Dan's been asking questions." Uncle Dan was Tom's great-uncle, a gruff but fair man who'd always treated me kindly. I hadn't seen him since the ban. But Lisa said he'd heard about it through the family grapevine. Apparently, he'd called Margaret's decision bullheaded at a recent gathering. It wasn't much, but it gave me hope. I reached out to Dan, and he invited me over. Sitting in his cluttered living room, I poured out the story. Dan listened, his face unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back. "Margaret's always had a mean streak," he said. "But this ain't just about you. It's about control and maybe something she's scared you'll dig up." My pulse quickened, like what I asked. Dan hesitated, then mentioned Tom's dad again, just like Lisa had. John was a good man, but he and Margaret had their secrets. He said, "She's protective of that legacy." Secret's legacy, I pressed. But Dan clammed up, saying it was Tom's place to explain. Driving home, I felt the weight of it all. Claire was rallying behind Margaret, but Dan and Lisa were hinting at something bigger. The family was splitting some saw Margaret's ban as unfair, others as her right. I was caught in the middle, unsure who to trust. One thing was clear. Margaret's power was cracking, and I had to keep pushing. But what was this secret about Tom's dad? And why was it worth tearing the family apart? Dan's words about Margaret's secrets echoed in my head. But they only deepened the mystery. I was done playing her game. Banning me from family meals was one thing. But hiding something about Tom's dad, that was a line I couldn't ignore. I had to confront her, not just for me, but for the truth. Have you ever faced someone who thought they could control you with silence? That was Margaret. And I was ready to break through her wall, no matter how ugly it got. I told Tom about Dan's cryptic hint, expecting him to brush it off. Instead, he went quiet, his jaw tight. "What do you know about your dad?" I asked gently. He shrugged, but his eyes darted away. "Not much. Mum doesn't talk about him. He died when I was a kid." His unease told me there was more, but I didn't push, not yet. First, I needed to face Margaret. We arranged to meet at her house, just the three of us. No kids, no Claire, no distractions. My stomach churned as we pulled into her driveway. This wasn't just about the ban anymore. It was about her hold over the family. Margaret greeted us with her usual poise, offering tea like we were there for a casual chat. I declined, my nerves too raw. Tom cut to the chase. "Mom, this ban on Sarah, it ends now. And we need to talk about why you're doing this." Margaret's smile didn't waver. "I've made my decision," she said, folding her hands. "It's for the family's sake. I couldn't hold back." "What family? Margaret? The one you're tearing apart? Or the one you're hiding secrets about?" Her eyes flashed, the first crack in her facade. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped. I leaned forward, heart pounding. "Then tell me, what's this about your husband? Why are you so scared of me digging into the past?" Tom looked between us, confused. Margaret's face hardened. "You're out of line. Sarah, this is my family, my rules." Her voice was ice, but I saw a flicker of fear. I pressed harder. "If it's your family, why are people like Dan and Lisa questioning you? What are you afraid I'll find out?" She stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. "This conversation is over," she said, pointing to the door. Tom grabbed my arm, signaling to leave. But I wasn't done. "You can't silence me. Margaret, I'm not going anywhere. And neither is the truth." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing, just turned away. As we left, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I'd rattled her, and that was power. But Tom was shaken. In the car. He finally spoke. "What was that about Dad?" "What's Dan been saying?" I told him everything, Lisa's hint. Dan's mention of secrets. The legacy Margaret was protecting. Tom's face paled. "I don't know much about Dad," he admitted. "But Mom's always been weird about his side of the family. Like she's hiding something. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind racing. Margaret's reaction confirmed it. There was something big she didn't want out. Was it about John's death, his family, or something she'd done? I started Googling, digging into old records. Anything I could find about Tom's dad? There wasn't much, just an obituary mentioning his death in a car accident when Tom was 6. But one detail stood out: John's sister, Tom's aunt. was still alive, living a few towns over. Margaret never mentioned her. Why was she part of this secret I knew, confronting Margaret again, would be war? But I was ready. What would you do if the truth could shatter everything you thought you knew about your family? Margaret's shaken expression stayed with me, a crack in her armor I couldn't ignore. I'd pushed her to the edge, and now I was certain her ban wasn't just about control. It was about bearing something. The mention of Tom's dad, John, had rattled her, and I was determined to find out why. Have you ever sensed a secret so close you could almost touch it, but it kept slipping away? That's where I was, teetering on the brink of truth, with the family's future hanging in the balance. I told Tom we needed to find his aunt, John's sister, Ellen. He hesitated, uneasy about digging into a past Margaret had locked away. What if it's nothing he asked? But I saw the curiosity in his eyes. He wanted answers too. Helen lived an hour away, and I found her number through an old family friend. When I called, her voice was warm but guarded. I haven't heard from Margaret in years. She said, but if you're asking about John, I'll tell you what I know. We arranged to meet the next day, and I felt a mix of hope and dread. What was Margaret so desperate to hide? Helen's house was small, cluttered with photos and knickknacks. She welcomed us with coffee, her eyes lingering on Tom. You look just like your dad, she said softly. I dove in, explaining the ban and Margaret's hostility. Then asked about John. Helen's face clouded. John was my best friend, she said. But Margaret, she changed him. Controlled everything, his friends, his money, even us. She paused, sipping her coffee. After he died, she cut me off. Said I was stirring trouble. But I wasn't. I just asked questions about the accident. My pulse quickened. What questions I asked? Helen leaned forward, her voice low. John's car crash wasn't simple. The police report said he'd been drinking. But John never drank, not like that. I think Margaret knows more than she said. Tom stiffened beside me. You're saying Mom lied? He asked, his voice sharp. Helen sighed. I'm saying she's hiding something. Always has. She was obsessed with keeping the family's image perfect, especially after John's death. I pressed further. Could this be why she's targeting me, because I'm asking too many questions? Helen nodded. You're a threat, Sarah. You don't bow to her, and she's scared you'll dig up the truth. Driving home. Tom was silent, his hands tight on the wheel. I could feel his world shifting. Do you think Mom could have done something? He asked finally. I didn't know how to answer. The idea that Margaret might have covered up something about John's death was chilling, but it fit. Her need for control, her fear of exposure, it all pointed to a secret she'd buried deep. But what was it? A lie? About the crash? Or something worse, I thought. Back to her reaction when I mentioned John, pure panic. She wasn't just protecting her pride. She was guarding a bombshell. That night, I couldn't stop turning it over. Helen's words painted a picture of Margaret as more than controlling, maybe manipulative, even dangerous. I started wondering about her ban in a new light. Was it a desperate move to keep me from getting too close to the family's past? If I kept pushing, what else might surface? Tom was struggling, torn between loyalty to his mother and the nagging doubt Ellen had planted. I knew we were at a breaking point. The truth was close, but it could destroy us. What would you do if you uncovered a secret that could unravel your entire family? I had to keep going, no matter the cost. Helen's revelations about John's death and Margaret's secrecy shifted everything. I felt like I was holding a live wire, dangerous, but impossible to let go. The ban, once just a cruel slight, now seemed like a desperate act to keep me from the truth. I needed allies. People who'd stand with me against Margaret's iron grip. Have you ever had to rally others to face a bully, knowing the fight could change everything? That's where I was, building strength to challenge a matriarch who'd ruled unchallenged for decades. Tom was still reeling from Helen's words, but he was starting to see his mother differently. If she's hiding something about Dad, he said, we deserve to know. His support gave me courage. But I knew we couldn't do this alone. I reached out to Lisa again, filling her in on Ellen's story. She wasn't surprised. Aunt Margaret's always been obsessed with appearances. She said, if she thinks you're onto her, she'll double down. But Lisa was in. She'd seen enough of Margaret's tactics to question her. I'll talk to Dan, she promised. He's got no patience for her games. Dan was our next stop, over beers at his place. We laid out everything: the ban, Helen's suspicions, the questions about John's crash. Dan's face grew grim. I never bought that drinking story, he said. John was steady, not a drunk. Margaret spun that tale to save face. He agreed to back us, even if it meant confronting her directly. She's my sister-in-law, he said. But family don't hide the truth. His gruff loyalty was a lifeline. With Lisa and Dan on our side, I felt the tide turning. But what about Claire? Could she be swayed? Or was she too deep in Margaret's shadow? I decided to try. I invited Claire for coffee, hoping to appeal to her sense of fairness. She showed up guarded, her arms crossed. I know you're upset about Mom, she said before I could start. But she's just protecting the family. I took a deep breath. Claire, what if she's protecting a lie about John's death? Her eyes widened, but she shook her head. That's crazy. You're stirring trouble. I pressed on, sharing Ellen's doubts and Dan's support. We're not against the family, I said. We just want the truth, don't you? For a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in her. I'll think about it, she muttered, leaving abruptly. It wasn't a win, but it was a crack. Word was spreading. At a family barbecue, awkwardly. Without me at the table, Lisa overheard cousins whispering about the ban. Some thought Margaret was out of line. Others, loyal to her, called me ungrateful. But Dan's voice carried weight when he gruffly defended me, saying, Sarah's family, ban or no ban. A few nodded. The family's unity, once Margaret's strength, was fraying. I felt a surge of hope. If enough people questioned her, she'd have to face us. But what would that look like? A showdown? Or would she lash out harder? Tom and I spent nights talking, planning. He dug through old boxes, finding a photo of his dad with Ellen, smiling, carefree nothing, like the troubled man Margaret described. It fueled his resolve. We're confronting her, he said. All of us. Lisa, Dan, maybe Claire. And others were ready to demand answers. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Margaret would fight to keep her secrets buried. But with allies behind me, I felt stronger than ever. What would you do if you had to face a family's darkest truth? With only a handful of supporters, I was about to find out. And there was no turning back. With Lisa, Dan, and maybe even Claire in our corner. I felt a fire I hadn't known was there. Margaret's ban had pushed me to the edge, but her secrets about John's death were the real battleground now. We couldn't let her control the narrative or the family any longer. Tom organized a meeting at our house, inviting everyone willing to face the truth. Have you ever stood up to someone who thought they were untouchable? That's what we were doing. And the stakes couldn't have been higher. The night arrived, tense and heavy. Lisa and Dan showed up first, their faces set with determination. Claire came too, surprising me, though her expression was guarded. A few cousins joined, curious or skeptical, drawn by the whispers of Margaret's overreach. Margaret arrived last, her posture rigid, eyes scanning the room like a general assessing a battlefield. "What's this about?" she demanded, her voice sharp. Tom stood tall. "Mum, we're done with the ban, and we're done with your secrets. Tell us about Dad's death." The room went still, every eye on her. Margaret's lips tightened. "I've told you everything," she said. But her voice wavered. I stepped forward. "Then why does Ellen say you lied about the crash? Why cut her off?" Her eyes flashed with something fear, maybe anger. "Ellen's bitter," she snapped. "She never understood John." Dan cut in, his voice gruff. "I knew John. He wasn't a drinker. That police report never sat right." Claire shifted uncomfortably, her loyalty wavering. I seized the moment. "Margaret, if you're protecting the family, why tear it apart over me? What are you hiding?" For a moment, I thought she'd storm out. But then, her shoulders sagged, just slightly. "You don't know what it was like," she said, her voice low. "After John died, people talked. They blamed me, said I drove him to drink. I had to protect our name for Tom, for Claire." Tom's face hardened. "Protect us by lying?" Margaret's eyes glistened, but she didn't answer. Claire spoke up, her voice small. "Mom, is that why you banned Sarah? Because she was asking questions?" Margaret looked away. And that silence was her confession. The truth spilled out in fragments. Margaret admitted she'd pushed the drinking story to deflect blame, terrified of losing her family's respect. My questions about John had scared her. She saw me as a threat who'd unravel her carefully built facade. The ban was her last-ditch effort to keep control. It wasn't about traditions. It was about fear. I felt a mix of anger and pity. "You hurt me to save yourself," I said. "But you can't control the truth." Margaret didn't respond. Her silence louder than any apology. The family agreed the ban was over. Margaret nodded, defeated. But I knew things wouldn't be the same. Some cousins hugged me. Others stayed quiet, processing the fracture. Claire apologized, tears in her eyes. And I forgave her. She'd been caught in Margaret's web too. As everyone left, Tom squeezed my hand. "You did it," he said. I wasn't so sure. The truth had cost us, but it had also freed us. What do you think can a family heal after a secret like that? In the weeks that followed, we rebuilt slowly. Margaret kept her distance, and I was okay with that. I learned to set boundaries, to value my place in the family, without her approval. The kids noticed the change, asking why Grandma was quieter. I told them sometimes grown-ups need time to fix things. This wasn't just about a ban. It was about standing up to unfairness, about demanding truth. If you've ever faced a family conflict, you know it's messy, but it's worth it. So, what would you do if you were me? Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear. This story, told through the daughter-in-law's eyes, unravels a family torn by Margaret's ban on her from family meals. What begins as a shocking act of exclusion reveals deeper secrets about control and truth. The narrator, Sarah, confronts Margaret's hostility, uncovering resentment tied to her independence and questions about John's death. With allies like Lisa and Dan, Sarah challenges Margaret's authority, exposing a lie about John's crash meant to protect the family's image. The ban, a desperate bid to silence Sarah, crumbles as the family demands honesty. Margaret's confession, driven by fear of shame, resolves the conflict, but scars remain. Sarah learns to set boundaries, reclaiming her place. This tale of betrayal and resilience asks, can families heal after buried truths surface? It's a raw look at fairness, power, and the cost of secrets, urging us to reflect on our own family dynamics.